The Mets are saying goodbye to their longest tenured player and someone who owner Steve Cohen referred to as a member of their Fab Four. SNY MLB insider Andy Martino reporting that the Mets are sending Brandon Nimmo to the Texas Rangers in return for infielder Marcus Semien. Nimmo has spent his entire 10-year MLB career with the Mets, who drafted him 13th overall in 2011 out of high school in Wyoming. So in return, the Amazons get Semien, a three-time All-Star, two-time Gold Glove winner, including last year at second base. The 35-year-old hit at least 20 homers all 5 full seasons from 2019 to 2024, but hit just 15 in 127 games last year. He is also reported deal $26 million each of the next 2 seasons, and then $20 million in 2028, while Nimmo has a deal $20.5 million every year through 2030. We are now joined by SNY MLB insider Andy Martino, who confirms this story. And Andy, let's just, as you mentioned and reported last week, Brandon Nimmo was on the block. How did this deal with Texas go down?
Well, it was kind of an old-fashioned baseball trade in that way with Texas, Eamon, in a sense that it was need for need. The Mets, as David Stearns has been very clear publicly, have been looking to improve their defense. And the Rangers, from their end, have been looking for a different offensive approach. So it matches up there in that sense. And, more broadly for the Mets, it gives them a chance to improve their defense really at 2 positions, because Semien, although off his peak as a hitter, is still an elite defensive second baseman. And that's what really excites the Mets, even though there is still upside in that bat, not just from the Mets perspective, but I've talked to some Texas-based people who think Semien has a couple solid years left in him as a hitter. But this is really about what he does for you at second base. And then defensively, if you look at the outfield, prior to this trade, the Mets had Juan Soto and Brandon Nimmo locked into the corner outfield positions for years to come, and neither is an elite defender at those positions. So now they have the flexibility at one of the corners, either to go internal with one of their young athletic players like Carson Bench or Jet Williams into the outfield mix sooner than later, or perhaps if things break a certain way in the offseason, they could look at a Cody Bellinger for immediate impact in the outfield. But really, Bellinger or not, this was about moving on from that Nimmo contract and improving the defense for this coming season.
You led me to my next question, because obviously this news is not a surprise after the rumors that were out there less than a week ago. But he was a mainstay here with the Mets that they committed to financially just a few years ago. So what sort of happened other than just sort of Juan Soto arriving that made Brandon Nimmo, quote unquote, expendable for the Mets?
He was a tough player to trade. I would almost think that if Met people were able to speak publicly about this, and they can't because this trade isn't official yet, but expendable would probably be too strong a word for them in a way. Like, it breaks their hearts to trade Brandon Nimmo in a lot of ways. Somebody who really has deep relationships at every level of the organization. And going back to Sandy Alderson's very first draft, you want to talk about a mainstay. But it's really just a baseball decision where you have an aging player who's only, as is the case with the rest of us in our lives, is only going to age in one direction. And for his particular job with Nimmo, he's just that contract is just really long. As you said, through 2030, and Semien's only a 3-year contract. So it just made sense from a shorter commitment and better defense next year. But it hurts them to lose Nimmo as a person.
As you mentioned, this helps the team immensely defensively. He's still coming off a Gold Glove season, but his offensive numbers, Marcus Semien, I'm just referring here to, have dropped off. So they're willing to take that drop off in offense. But Nimmo, even though he might have declined in the outfield, was still providing some pop and with the home run. So how do you think they will, fill that offensive role that they might be losing in the run production with Nimmo?
It's so early in the offseason, and there's so many moving parts, Eamon, that right now, the Mets, I can tell you for a fact, they don't have a specific plan. Like, this domino fell, so we're signing this guy because Nimmo's gone. It's not like that. It's like, over the course of this offseason, there'll be enough moving around with a roster where they think they'll be in a good place offensively by spring training. Again, whether they take a big swing at a Bellinger, whether they bring Pete Alonso back, whether they do something that we don't foresee at this point. They think they have a lot of time to shore up that offense. And again, it's just about defense being such a core value for Stearns that They saw an opportunity to get defensively better and didn't need an exact blueprint to how you replace Nimmo's bat in the lineup. That's not what this was about. It wasn't the first domino in a whole plan set of moves. It was just the first domino in an offseason that could take them in a lot of different directions.
For more on that, we welcome in Todd Zeile. And Todd, I want to start on from a pure baseball sense with you on this one. How do you think the Mets got better after making this move for Semien?
I think that remains to be seen. I'm not quite positive yet that they have gotten better. I think Marcus Semien is a very, very good player, but you're also getting a guy that's 35 years old, has a couple of years left on his contract, is Gold Glove caliber, was a Gold Glove winner last year, but his offensive numbers dipped a little bit. But I think as far as you looking at it from a holistic standpoint, you've got a guy that can play a very, very good quality second base. He could fill that spot there. I know run prevention and especially defense up the middle is something that this Mets team has been looking to improve upon. But at the same time, this is not a lock that he's going to be that same productive guy. You don't see a lot of guys getting moved at 35 plus years of age. So I think it remains to be seen. I do think that it's an absence to not have Brandon Nimmo in that locker room, but I also think that his willingness to move that no trade clause and take this trade tells me that there's something maybe even beneath the surface, under the radar, about that clubhouse that maybe he knows better than we know, Eamon.
Todd, you led me to my next question because obviously you had a long tenured career, but with many different teams. So getting traded, I'm sure was, it's part of life in the major leagues. I was a little surprised, that I thought he'd be tougher to move because of the no trade. But, as you mentioned, maybe he figured if they didn't want me here, well, I don't want to be at a place where I'm not wanted. But as someone who knows Brandon Nimmo well, were you a little surprised that he ultimately waived the no trade clause?
Yeah, I was, Eamon. And I think the reason that I was surprised is because if you get to this point in your career, you've never put the World Series ring on, you want to make sure that you're going to giving yourself the best opportunity to do that. I think that anybody around baseball over the last 4 or 5 years recognizes that with Steve Cohen at the helm and David Stearns as the president, this team is not going to take anything less than postseason and winning opportunities and going to do everything they can to make those happen. So as a player, maybe sacrificing a little bit of that possibility to win when you have the ability to block any trade was a little bit surprising. But I think, it goes to what I was saying initially, Eamon, and that is that I think this clubhouse was a bit of a mystery. I think Brandon is a guy that has always been an upfront voice of the clubhouse, a voice of reason, a solid guy, a homegrown guy that brings a kind of perspective in that clubhouse. And you just got to wonder if there's something in that mix that made him feel like he had a better chance somewhere else. If that's the case, then I think the Mets are looking at other issues and other holes that they're going to have to fill to fulfill what they've set out to do, and that's to win a championship.
Yeah, that chemistry in the clubhouse has definitely been something people have whispered even loudly about the last 2 or 3 years. But, now as we sit back and analyze what's next, as Gary mentioned, there's a thread coming up here. Todd, you sit back, the Mets needs, what's out there. What do you think this now opens up for David Stearns' next possible move or priority?
Well, that's a great question. And I think, initially just reacting to it, I had heard some, of the rumors about Brandon, and I just figured it wasn't going to happen because of the things that I just mentioned. This tells me that there's, maybe some other underlying things that have to be addressed. And I think some of that is that glue, that heart, that sort of pulse of the Mets that I think was missing last season, I think has shown up and gone away over the last 3 or 4 seasons. So maybe there's going to be a look to try to fill that void. And we can talk about the Jose Iglesias of the world or Max Scherzers of the world. I think Jesse Winker was a guy that was made to fill that role last year with all the injuries. He wasn't able to be that glue. So I think that's one issue. But I think secondarily, this opens the possibility to go try and get good defensively in center field and maybe have an option left field. It could be, is it Cody Bellinger, a guy that's on the list, or is Kyle Tucker a guy that's on the list? I think you open that possibility for David Stearns to go look to fill this with some guys that you wondered if they brought him over, how they were going to make it work with Brandon in left and Soto in right.